Just weeks ago, something was discovered that changed everything we thought we knew about Egypt. In early 2025, advanced ground-penetrating radar scans beneath the sands of Giza revealed vast anomalies that defied the expectations of archaeologists and geologists alike. The images showed symmetrical chambers, spiraling formations, and vertical shafts extending thousands of feet below the surface, features far too precise to be dismissed as mere quirks of geology. The announcement, made public by Italian researchers Professor Corrado Malanga and Filippo Biondi, spread rapidly through the scientific community, shaking the foundations of established Egyptology. The scans suggested the existence of an elaborate, subterranean network beneath the Pyramid of Khafre, with structures resembling carefully engineered staircases, corridors, and vast hollowed-out spaces. According to their measurements, some of these shafts descended over 2,000 feet, a depth twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. Chambers as large as modern buildings appeared beneath the desert plateau, aligned in geometric patterns that indicated intentional design rather than natural erosion or fault lines. Yet as the findings gained international attention, mainstream Egyptologists moved quickly to discredit them. Foremost among the critics was Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most recognizable authority on ancient monuments. He labeled the anomalies radar illusions and insisted that the data had been misinterpreted. In televised interviews, he dismissed the claims outright, asserting that the pyramids in the plateau had already been thoroughly studied and that no such underground city existed. Too many observers, the speed and certainty of this rejection raised more questions than it answered. The tension between discovery and denial is not new in archaeology. Breakthroughs that challenge entrenched narratives often face resistance, especially when they threaten to disrupt long-standing interpretations of history. The radar scans of 2025 fit this pattern precisely. The Italian team stood by their results, publishing detailed datasets and pointing out the consistency across multiple independent scans. For them, the evidence was undeniable. Beneath the Pyramid of Khafre lay a vast, human-made construction. If confirmed, the implications would be staggering. An underground complex of such scale would demand engineering capabilities far beyond what conventional timelines attribute to ancient Egypt. It would raise profound questions about who built the pyramids, when, and for what purpose. The absence of historical records mentioning such a network only deepens the mystery. For now, the discoveries remain contested, balanced between revolutionary potential and cautious skepticism. But the images cannot be unseen. The data points to something vast, deliberate, and hidden deep below the sands of Giza, something that could force historians to reconsider the origins of one of the world's most enduring civilizations. The opening shockwave has been felt. What comes next will determine whether this is remembered as a scientific breakthrough or a buried truth left to fade back into the desert. March 2025 marked a turning point on the Giza Plateau. Professor Corrado Malanga, alongside Italian researcher Filippo Biondi, released the first detailed results of their ground-penetrating radar survey beneath the Pyramid of Khafre. The scans displayed extraordinary formations, vast vertical shafts, spiraling patterns, and hollow spaces that appeared to extend hundreds of meters below the desert floor. Unlike previous anomalies, these images showed symmetry, alignment, and repetition signatures that, in scientific terms, suggest intentional design rather than natural geology. The radar revealed for primary spiraling structures, twisting downward, like staircases vanishing into the earth. Their uniformity made accidental formation improbable. Adjacent to these spirals, long corridors stretched into darkness, intersecting with hollow chambers that measured wider than modern auditoriums. Early measurements suggested depths exceeding 600 meters, a scale that shocked even experienced geophysicists. Malanga and Biondi stressed that multiple radar passes had produced consistent results, ruling out error or random interference. To them, the evidence was clear. Something immense lay beneath Khafre's pyramid. News of the findings spread rapidly, igniting speculation across international media. Some hailed it as the beginning of a new era in Egyptology, one that could finally expose what centuries of excavation had failed to uncover. But within days, leading voices in mainstream archaeology stepped forward to dismiss the claims. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities and perhaps the most recognizable authority on the pyramids, gave an immediate rebuttal. In an interview with CBS News, he was blunt. That is not true. They are lying, completely lying. These scans cannot show kilometers beneath the ground. This is not possible. When pressed on the radar technology itself, Hawass admitted, "I did not study this equipment, but I know the pyramids, and I know there is nothing there." His statements carried weight. For decades, Hawass had controlled access to Giza's monuments, often deciding which excavations could move forward and which would be denied. To many, his skepticism reflected the caution of experience. To others, it seemed like a deliberate effort to prevent disruptive discoveries from taking root. The clash revealed a fault line in archaeology, rigorous new data versus entrenched authority. Malanga's team presented precise technical readings, while critics invoked the absence of traditional excavation evidence. Public opinion fractured. Some saw an underground labyrinth waiting to be confirmed. Others accepted the dismissal as another example of fringe science overreaching. What cannot be ignored is the scale of the claims. The March 2025 scans suggested a subterranean world beneath one of history's most iconic monuments. For the researchers, it was an extraordinary step toward rewriting Egypt's story. For mainstream Egyptology, it was a reminder of the dangers of speculation. The first signs had appeared, and with them came controversy that would only intensify. In the months ahead, by June 2025, the findings beneath Giza had grown impossible to ignore. New radar scans, conducted with higher precision than those from March, revealed an even more detailed picture beneath the Pyramid of Khafre. What emerged was not a series of vague anomalies, but an organized network of structures extending over 2,000 feet into the earth. The scans showed vast vertical shafts, descending to extraordinary depths, chambers so large they matched the dimensions of Olympic swimming pools, and spiral staircases that appeared to wind further and further underground, with remarkable regularity. The clarity of the images left little doubt. As Professor Corrado Malanga stated plainly, "This is not geology, this is architecture." The sheer scale of the subterranean formations astonished researchers. One chamber measured nearly 80 meters across, large enough to rival modern civic halls. Corridors appeared in deliberate alignment, connecting shafts to chambers in a way that suggested planning, engineering, and intent. The radar imagery showed edges to straight, angles to consistent, and symmetry to precise to be explained away by natural processes. For Malanga and his team, the conclusion was unavoidable. Beneath Khafre's pyramid lay a constructed complex. Unlike anything yet documented in Egypt, the reaction worldwide was immediate. Independent scientists, geophysicists, and engineers reviewing the data were struck by its consistency and scale. Some cautiously described it as one of the most significant archaeological findings in decades, with the potential to reshape the study of ancient civilizations. International media seized on the story, framing it as a discovery that could challenge everything we thought we knew about Egypt's past. But within Egyptology itself, the pushback was swift. Prominent voices, including Dr. Zahi Hawass, once again dismissed the scans. Critics argued that radar imaging could be misinterpreted, that subterranean voids might be natural cavities, or that equipment limitations could distort results. Hawass was especially direct, calling the findings misleading and warning against what he described as sensational claims. Yet Malanga's team countered with evidence that the scans had been repeated multiple times, using different machines, each confirming the same results. The sharp divide raised troubling questions. If the evidence was so carefully gathered, why the rush to dismiss it? Why not investigate further before rejecting it outright? Some observers pointed to institutional inertia. Established scholars were reluctant to embrace discoveries that might overturn decades of accepted history. Others suspected something more deliberate, reluctance to expose findings that could disrupt Egypt's tightly controlled archaeological narrative, one tied closely to national identity and tourism. What is certain is that by July 2025, the underground images had forced the debate into the global spotlight. Were these immense formations the work of nature, or the remains of a forgotten civilization concealed beneath Giza? The scans revealed structures that bore every mark of human intent, yet the official response remained resistant. The possibility of an underground city had been placed on the table. Whether embraced or denied, the evidence demanded a reckoning. For centuries, the pyramids of Giza have stood as the ultimate symbols of ancient Egypt, credited in nearly every textbook to the 4th dynasty pharaohs. Yet when examined closely, the evidence for this attribution is far thinner than most assume. Inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu, there are no inscriptions, no records of its construction, no explicit claim of ownership carved into its vast chambers, unlike temples, tombs, and monuments across Egypt that proudly display names, dates, and dedications. The pyramids themselves remain almost entirely silent. The single piece of evidence linking Khufu to the Great Pyramid is a faint piece of red ochre graffiti discovered in the 19th century in an upper relieving chamber above the king's chamber. The inscription, consisting of Khufu's royal cartouche, is widely regarded as proof that the monument was built under his reign, but critics point out its context. The cartouche was found in a space sealed until the 1830s, when British explorer Colonel Richard Howard Vyse blasted his way inside using gunpowder. The placement of the graffiti raised questions. Was it truly an ancient builder's mark left during construction, or a later addition intentional or otherwise during modern exploration? The absence of any other inscriptions in a structure of such magnitude remains unusual. By contrast, consider the skyscrapers of the modern era. Builders, architects, and even corporate patrons leave detailed records of their involvement. Names are etched on plaques, designs are preserved in archives, and public acknowledgement is everywhere. It is difficult to imagine a project on the scale of the Great Pyramid, consisting of over 2 million stone blocks and decades of labor, leaving behind virtually no contemporary record. Why would the ancient Egyptians, who documented everything, from tax receipts to medical procedures, remain silent on their most monumental achievement? This silence has fueled alternative theories. Some suggest that the pyramids may predate the 4th dynasty entirely, inherited rather than constructed by the pharaohs who later claimed them. Geological studies on the Great Sphinx, particularly those by geologist Robert Schoch in the 1990s, argued that the monument shows signs of water erosion, inconsistent with the Sahara's climate over the last 4,500 years. If correct, the Sphinx and potentially the pyramids may be far older than dynastic Egypt, pointing to a civilization capable of monumental stone architecture long before the Nile kingdoms emerged. Mainstream Egyptology continues to reject these claims, emphasizing the cartouche and circumstantial evidence of tools and quarry marks found around the site. Yet the debate endures, because the absence of direct construction records is undeniable. Without clear inscriptions or contemporary documentation, the origins of the pyramids remain one of history's greatest open questions. Were they truly the product of the Old Kingdom, or the legacy of an advanced, forgotten culture that left no written trace? The uncertainty leaves the pyramids not only as architectural marvels but also as enigmas. Their stones are real, their presence undeniable, yet their true builders may never be conclusively identified. The silence within their walls continues to challenge what we think we know about the deep past of human civilization. In early 2025, a Japanese team from Higashi Nippon International University and Tohoku University brought new technology to the sands of Giza using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography. They examined areas near the western cemetery of the plateau far from the central pyramids but within the ancient necropolis. What they uncovered was striking. Just 2 meters below the surface lay an L-shaped structure, carefully defined, measuring roughly 10 by 10 meters. Its shape was too deliberate to be explained as a natural rock formation. It had been buried, intentionally, sealed beneath layers of sand that ensured it remained invisible for centuries. Beneath this first structure, at a depth of 5 to 10 meters, scans revealed something even more unusual: a perfectly square cavity, nearly identical in size, with signatures in the data indicating a hollow, air-filled chamber. In archaeological surveys, such readings are unmistakable. This was not compacted stone or geological faulting. It was a void, a deliberate space created by human hands. The precise geometry, combined with the concealed positioning, suggested function rather than accident. The findings were published in Archaeological Research in Asia, where the Japanese researchers noted that the structures aligned too consistently to be dismissed as natural anomalies. Their report emphasized the careful concealment, noting the way sand had been deliberately layered to obscure any trace at the surface. The evidence pointed to human construction, a design meant to hide. The discoveries immediately raised broader questions. Could these be entrances, sealed portals into a larger subterranean network? The possibility resonated with long-circulated legends in Egypt. Ancient texts and later writings describe hidden repositories of knowledge, sometimes referred to as the Hall of Records, said to contain the wisdom of civilizations that predated pharaonic Egypt. For centuries, these accounts were treated as myth. Yet the radar data now revealed chambers deliberately concealed beneath one of history's most studied landscapes. The symbolism of a hidden chamber in Giza cannot be ignored. In Egyptian tradition, tombs, passageways, and hidden doors served to protect sacred objects and shield them from desecration. If these structures were indeed sealed deliberately, they fit a broader cultural pattern of guarding what was not meant to be easily found. But their shallow depth, combined with their deliberate concealment, makes their purpose more enigmatic. Why construct symmetrical chambers, hide them beneath only a few meters of sand, and leave no external marker? Mainstream Egyptologists have remained cautious, calling for restraint before labeling the discovery as anything more than anomalies awaiting excavation. Yet the clarity of the data forces the question: why deliberately bury chambers near the plateau, and what role might they play in the larger mystery of Giza's subterranean world? The answer, if ever uncovered, could connect myth with measurable evidence, shifting what has long been considered legend into the realm of history. Since the release of the 2025 radar data, one fact has remained consistent: the Egyptian authorities have refused to authorize further excavation. Requests by international teams to drill, probe, or even re-scan beneath the Giza plateau have been delayed or denied outright. The official explanation has been caution that excavation risks damaging the integrity of the monuments, and that only state-approved projects can proceed. Yet the pattern is clear. Each time an independent group presents new findings that challenge accepted narratives, permits are withheld, and access is restricted. This resistance is not without context. Egypt's tourism industry depends heavily on the pyramids as symbols of national heritage and continuity. Every year, millions visit Giza to see the monuments credited to the 4th dynasty. This narrative that the pyramids were the triumph of Egyptian civilization 4,500 years ago underpins Egypt's global identity. Admitting the possibility of a lost, older civilization, or even unexplored chambers that could rewrite history, risks destabilizing that image. To challenge the narrative is to challenge a cornerstone of national pride and economic stability. Former officials, like Dr. Zahi Hawass, have been explicit in their dismissal of alternative interpretations. Beyond scientific debate, the state exercises control over excavation licenses, foreign research teams, and access to sites. Independent archaeologists who attempt to pursue controversial findings often find their permits denied, their projects stalled indefinitely. It is a system designed to centralize authority over Egypt's past, ensuring that no discovery emerges without government approval. There is also a political dimension. Since the 19th century, Egyptology has been tied to questions of sovereignty, colonial exploitation, and cultural control. Protecting the official version of history is not only about scholarship, but also about ownership of heritage. To allow outside researchers to claim breakthroughs beneath the pyramids could be seen as a loss of authority, weakening Egypt's control over its own past. In this context, suppression becomes a form of protection. Still, the consistency of these denials fuels suspicion. If the radar scans are indeed flawed, why not authorize excavation to disprove them definitively? If the anomalies are natural, confirming this would reinforce the mainstream position. Instead, the refusal to investigate leaves the questions unresolved and encourages speculation about deeper motives. Some argue that authorities may already know what lies beneath Giza, and that concealment is deliberate. Whether for economic, political, or cultural reasons, the effect is the same. Discoveries that could challenge established history are slowed, restricted, or ignored. The possibility of vast subterranean chambers remains untested, suspended between data and excavation. Until exploration is permitted, the debate cannot be settled. The silence of officialdom ensures that mystery persists, and with it, the suspicion that beneath Giza's sands lies more than stone. It may be a carefully guarded truth. In the 1990s, a discovery in southeastern Turkey forced archaeologists to reconsider the origins of civilization. At Göbekli Tepe, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt uncovered megalithic stone pillars carved with intricate animal figures. arranged in circles more than 11,000 years old. The site predated agriculture, writing, and the earliest known cities, yet demonstrated advanced planning, symbolic expression, and construction skill. For years, mainstream experts had dismissed such possibilities as impossible. Hunter-gatherers were not thought capable of building on this scale. But Göbekli Tepe was real, and today it is recognized as one of the most important archaeological finds of the modern era. Nearby at Karahan Tepe, excavations revealed equally sophisticated stone structures, carved statues, and organized layouts of similar antiquity. Together, the two sites dismantled the idea that complex societies only emerged around 3000 BCE. They proved that organized, large-scale construction existed thousands of years earlier than conventional timelines had allowed. What was once rejected as speculation became an accepted fact. These examples resonate when examining the anomalies at Giza. Skepticism from mainstream archaeology mirrors the early dismissal of Göbekli Tepe. The pattern is familiar. New discoveries are doubted, sometimes ridiculed, until evidence becomes undeniable. The radar images beneath Giza may be following the same trajectory, moving from controversy to confirmation. Global traditions also reinforce this possibility. Across cultures, myths describe a great flood or cataclysm that destroyed earlier civilizations. From Mesopotamia's Epic of Gilgamesh to the flood narrative in the Hebrew Bible, and from Indian traditions of Manu to Native American accounts of inundation, the theme repeats with striking consistency. Geological studies identify the Younger Dryas, a sudden climatic event around 12,000 years ago, as a period of massive floods and environmental change. Many researchers connect this event with the destruction of earlier societies, aligning myth with measurable evidence. Closer to Giza, geological analysis of the Sphinx has sparked similar debate. Geologist Robert Schoch argued in the 1990s that erosion patterns on the monument's body were caused by heavy rainfall, not desert winds. If correct, the Sphinx would date back to a time when Egypt's climate was wetter, thousands of years earlier than the conventional 2500 BCE attribution. Mainstream Egyptologists reject this claim, but the evidence remains visible on the stone. There is also the inventory stela, an inscription from the 7th century BCE, which states that the Sphinx and certain temples were already ancient in the time of Khufu. Though dismissed by many as unreliable, the text suggests that later Egyptians themselves believed the monuments predated their known history. When these clues are assembled, sites older than agriculture, myths of a global flood, erosion inconsistent with dynastic dating, and inscriptions pointing to forgotten builders, a possibility emerges. Human history may contain missing chapters. Civilizations may have risen, achieved advanced knowledge, and been erased, leaving behind fragments that later cultures inherited. The subterranean anomalies beneath Giza may be one more fragment, waiting to determine whether our current story of civilization is complete or whether it is only a partial record of a much deeper past. If the subterranean structures beneath Giza are ever confirmed, the consequences would reach far beyond archaeology. The accepted timeline of human civilization, which places the rise of complex societies around 5,000 years ago, would be fundamentally challenged. Textbooks across the world would require revision. The pyramids, long celebrated as the crowning achievement of the Old Kingdom, could instead be evidence of an older, more advanced culture that existed before recorded history. The implications are profound. Modern understanding of human progress rests on the assumption that agriculture, writing, and monumental architecture developed gradually, beginning in Mesopotamia and spreading outward. A vast engineered complex beneath Giza, potentially predating the pharaohs, would overturn that sequence. It would suggest that humanity achieved sophisticated engineering much earlier than believed, and that entire civilizations may have risen and fallen before Egypt's dynasties left their mark. This possibility also touches on the question of origins. If an advanced culture did precede Egypt, who were its builders, and why did their history vanish? Were they destroyed by the environmental upheavals of the Younger Dryas? Were their achievements absorbed by later societies, leaving only fragments behind? The existence of such a culture would force historians and scientists to consider that what we call the beginning of civilization may only be a midpoint in a far longer, more complex story. For Egypt itself, the discovery would be equally disruptive. The pyramids are central to national identity, celebrated as the work of the pharaohs, and protected as symbols of cultural pride. To suggest that they were inherited rather than built would shift the meaning of these monuments from dynastic triumphs to relics of a forgotten past. The political and cultural consequences of such a revelation helped explain the resistance to deeper exploration. Beyond politics, the discovery would provoke philosophical reflection. For centuries, the pyramids have been seen as puzzles, inspiring theories ranging from practical engineering to cosmic alignment. They embody humanity's drive to build, to preserve, and to reach beyond the limits of time. The possibility of hidden cities beneath them only deepens their mystery. It reminds us that history is not a complete record, but a reconstruction built from fragments, vulnerable to revision with every new discovery. What is at stake, then, is not simply one archaeological site, but our understanding of who we are. If the data proves correct, the pyramids would no longer be isolated marvels of the Bronze Age. They would stand as monuments to an even older chapter of humanity, one still buried beneath sand, waiting to be uncovered. Until that day, they remain a riddle carved in stone, reminding us that the past is never as complete as we believe. For more than 2 centuries, archaeologists have studied the Giza plateau, convinced that the pyramids stand as monuments to Egypt's old kingdom. Yet in 2025, radar scans revealed something that does not fit neatly into that narrative. Vast shafts stretching more than 600 meters, chambers the size of modern buildings, and spiral formations too precise to be explained away as natural geology. These images remain contested, but they cannot be ignored. They represent data measurable, repeatable, and consistent that hints at a reality buried beneath the sand. The debate is not only about engineering, it is about history itself. If the anomalies beneath Khufu's pyramid are proven to be human-made, then the pyramids are not simply tombs of the pharaohs. They are evidence of knowledge, technology, and purpose that far exceed the explanations we have accepted for centuries. If natural, they still demand a re-examination of how geology has shaped the plateau. But if artificial, the implications extend to the very roots of civilization. This is why the question matters. Were the pyramids built solely by Egyptians 4,500 years ago, or do they conceal the legacy of a civilization far older, erased by time but not by stone? Could the Hall of Records, long described in ancient texts and dismissed as legend, lie beneath our feet in one of these hidden voids? Why do authorities consistently deny deeper exploration, even when the technology reveals such clear anomalies? The world is left with possibilities rather than answers. Some see myth, others see suppressed truth, and still others see nothing but overinterpreted data. Yet the questions remain, haunting and unresolved. The pyramids, silent as they are, continue to provoke the same wonder they have inspired for millennia. The truth beneath Giza cannot stay buried forever. Until next time, stay curious,